तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं घविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति भूरिराज. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Some of you know that we had to cancel last week because a little touch of COVID that now seem to be pretty much over. So I apologize that we didn't have class last week. Anyhow, we're on the chapter Rules for Householders and Monks. This is page 406, and it's March 23rd. Already done. Yeah, March 23rd, 1884. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room after his midday meal with Rakal, Ram, and some other devotees. He was not quite well. The injured arm was still bandaged. But in spite of his illness, his room was a veritable mart of joy, and he the center of it. Devotees thronged there daily to see the master. Spiritual talk went on incessantly, and the very air of the room vibrated with bliss. Sometimes the master would sing the name and glories of God, and sometimes he would go into samadhi. The devotees being amazed at the ease with which the master freed himself from the consciousness of the body. Ram. Now, I should make a little comment about this is Swamiji's uncle. I don't remember exactly, but Ram Chandradatta, very close devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. But if you follow very carefully all of the things that he says, he's a troublemaker. Huh? He'll make funny little comments and talk about people behind their back, and I don't know why. There's something funny about him. Anyhow, he raises this issue that he knows will be an issue as if it's nothing. Ram, there is talk of Narendra's marrying Mr. R. Mitra's daughter. He'll know all of this because he's a family member. Narendra has been offered a large dowry. Now, when Swamiji's father passed away and they went through all of that terrible period of the poverty and everything, there was always lingering in the background, one way out was getting Narendra married to a well-to-do family with a good dowry and everything. And that was always in the background, a little talk about that and everything. So this issue had come up at this particular time. Master smiling. Yes, Narendra may thus become a leader of society or something like that. He will be an outstanding man, whatever career he follows. And then very quickly it says, the master did not much encourage the conversation about Narendra. Now, this is an issue that has come up, and it was a little bit of a controversial issue at one time. I won't mention the two Swamis, but two of our very early Swamis in this country, they kind of feuded over this question. Is it possible that Narendra ever could have married and could have become a lawyer and a big man in society and everything, big political leader, something like that? Thakur says here, if he had followed that path, it would have happened. On the other hand, is it possible that he ever could have? So this, and was Sri Ramakrishna was he really concerned? These are interesting questions because when Thakur put Narendra in that state, in Jadu Malik's house, and asked all questions about his future and his mission, why he came to earth, all of these things, and was satisfied that everything agreed with his vision of Narendra and everything, then there should be no question that impossible for anything to have happened otherwise. almost as if Sri Krishna was really worried that Arjuna would not fight in the battle and that their side would lose. It was kind of predetermined, something like that. On the other hand, Sri Ramakrishna, as he said so many times, as the avatar, he has a human mind and he has concerns and worries and doubts and all of those things. So uh, I think it's possible that in the back of Thakur's mind is, oh my God, what will happen if he gets married? Everything will be spoiled, something like that. That a little bit that idea, could have been there, not impossible.
He says that may these talks about marriage break down. He prays to mother.
That yes, he'll even pray to mother that these talks won't go through. And there was another time when Thakur knew intuitively that Narendra was thinking of renouncing the world and going off on his own. And then that time Thakur also, he sang that beautiful song that Radha, I'm afraid to something to believe my Krishna is here or leaving, something like, and I mean that also to spoil that, and then if I remember correctly, elicited a promise from Narendra that he wouldn't do anything like that as long as Thakur was still alive, something like that. So yes, I think it's quite possible that Thakur, being both divine and human, from that human side, to think that really they're talking about it. What if this poor Narendra, that he feels he has no choice for the sake of his family, he's willing to do it? Because it actually happened with Mahapurush Maharaj, Tarak, Tarak Da, the Swami Shivananda, that for the sake of his family, for the sake of his sister, he agreed to marry. They didn't have much money and they couldn't afford to get his sister married. Uh, but there was a proposal that there was a young man who would marry the sister if he could marry that man's sister. So a double marriage, brother and sister marrying a brother and sister. And he agreed out of love of his sister and understanding that otherwise she might remain unmarried her whole life. So he agreed. And then somehow Mahapurush Maharaj's wife died very young, shortly after they got married. And Yogan also, just because of the tears of his mother, he agreed to get married. So it wasn't something completely unthinkable that one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, even Ishwara Koti, that could have possibly gotten married, although in retrospect we think no, it never could have happened. But anyhow, this is that proposal, and it's very clear that Thakur is not very happy about this line of discussion. So just very simply, it says that the master did not much encourage the conversation about Narendra. It's not like he told Ram, why did you bring this up? Nothing. He just didn't pursue it at all, just changed the topic. But if he had, whatever Narendra would have done, we know he had this special type of leadership skills that whatever he touched, that he would have been successful at. And just that we can imagine him doing anything other than what he actually did. Master to Ram. Well, can you tell me why I become so impatient when I'm ill? Sometimes I ask this man and sometimes that man how I may be cured. You see, one must either believe everyone or no one at all. Now, this is also, we may say that Sri Ramakrishna is all knowing and the avatar. Why asking this person and that person? And he himself gave the answer many, many times. He says, Mother has kept me in that state of a child. Balakavat. He talks about all the different states, that sometimes like a madman, sometimes like a drunkard, sometimes completely inert, like a ghoul, all of the different states. But generally, he was in that state of a child. And a child is very guileless and naive and will accept things and everything. And he didn't like this idea of people just being skeptics. Some say atmiga. You say those people who have the very skeptical nature, don't believe anything. They're very hard for them to realize God. So the better to even have some simple, simplistic type of beliefs than none at all. It is God himself who has become the physicians. Therefore, one must believe one must believe all of them, but one cannot have faith in them if one thinks of them as mere men. Yeah, Thakur, there were some that he liked more than others. There were some doctors he didn't like. All they do is poke me, press my tongue like I'm a cow, things like that. And this medicine doesn't work, and why do you criticize that doctor? And he also had his own opinions about things. Shambhu was fearfully delirious. This Shambhu Malik, he lived very close to the Dakshineshwar temple. Dr. Sarvadhikari said that the delirium was due to the strong medicine. Haladhari asked the doctor to feel his pulse. The doctor said, "Let me see your eyes." "Oh, it is an enlargement of the spleen." Haladhari said he had nothing of the sort, but Dr. Madhu gives good medicine. So anyhow, he's giving a little opinion about doctors. He also talks about, I think it was also Shambhu Malik, was it? That when the doctor said that don't worry, I'll cure you. And then Thakur said that this is one of the times when God laughs. The doctor says, I'll cure you. Doesn't he know that I've already decided that he won't live after this? Ram, the medicine by itself does no good, though it greatly helps nature. Now, he was a chemist, pharmacist type of chemist. So probably he knew a lot about Western medicine also. And this, of course, is a theory that many people hold on to, that there's no real cure, but it strengthens the system itself will cure, something like that. Master, if that is so, why does opium cause constipation? So, his own simple way of saying that these are chemical things we're adding to the body. They'll have some direct effect also. Ram referred to Keshav Sen's death. Ram, you were right. You said that a gardener uncovers the roots of a good rose plant so that it may absorb the dew and grow stronger and healthier. The words of a holy man have been fulfilled. Now, this is also a curious thing. I think I always misunderstood this. That when Thakur said that he was going through that terrible illness, it sounded almost as if he meant that this is in order for there to be some type of cure and that he'll recover from it. But now I think it didn't mean that at all. And now I think somehow he meant that this is the way that that soul is becoming completely purified, so that when the body is gone, that he'll have his liberation. I don't know. What do you think, Maharaj? There's a curious thing. He said, Thakur said that there's some roses that they'll actually shake all the roots so that there's no dirt around it at all. Leave it out so it'll get the dew in the early morning, and somehow that will, if there's any disease or weakness in the rose, that'll give it some invigorate it, and so they can be replanted, and it'll be a good rose plant, something like that. It gives the impression that it's for the physical body for it to continue to grow. But Keshav died shortly after that, and Thakur knew it, and Keshav knew it. Everybody knew it. So it sounds like it's this other way, this final preparation for ultimate liberation. Master, I don't know about that. I wasn't calculating when I said it. It is you who say that. Ram, now let's see, he'll continue his troublemaking. The Brahmos have published something about you in their magazine. So almost as if to I raise a response. Master, published about me. Why? Why should they write now? I eat and drink and make merry. Now, he says, why should they do it now? I think that means after the passing of Keshab and after the split and all the controversy and people leaving and everything. They wrote about him much earlier. There's no point in writing more at this point. Why should they write now? I eat and drink and make merry. I don't know anything else. I once asked Keshab, why have you written about me? He said that it would bring people here. Thakur was never happy. I won't say completely unhappy because he knew it was the will of the Divine Mother. And he knew that there were different people who would be instrumental in allowing his mission to take shape. He knew, of course, with him, he knew with Narendra and other, but Keshab and the Brahmo Samaj, they also had a role to play. So I think he understood that. But at the same time, he didn't like this blazoning. He didn't like this publishing things in their magazine and everything, and signboards, that type of stuff. That he definitely didn't like. So he said, I once asked Keshav, why have you written about me? He said that it would bring people here. But man cannot teach by his own power. One cannot conquer ignorance without the power of God. At one time, two men were engaged to wrestle. One of them was Hanuman Singh, and the other a Mussulman from the Punjab. The Mussulman was a strong, stout man. He had eaten lustily of butter and meat for 15 days before the day of the wrestling match, and even on that day, all thought he would be the victor. Hanuman Singh, on the other hand, clad in a dirty cloth, had eaten sparingly for some days before the day of the match, and devoted himself to repeating the holy name of Mahavir. This is just, they say, patron deity of wrestlers. So this is standard. We have some masks there. Yeah. We're being a little cautious with the mask because there's been a little COVID around lately. Yeah. Yeah. On the day of the match, he observed a complete fast. All thought that he would surely be defeated, but it was he who won, while the man who had fasted for 15 days lost the fight. What is the use of printing and advertising? He who teaches men gets his power from God. None but a man of renunciation can teach others. I am the greatest of all fools. All laugh. The work that Keshav did was, Thakur appreciated Keshav. And I don't think that he felt that there was anything non-genuine about Keshav. He really had a very sweet, close relationship with him. But this was a strong conviction with Sri Ramakrishna that at the heart of spiritual teaching, there has to be a very strong spirit of renunciation. Not that everyone has to renounce, but the ones who talk about it have to do it. And not just renunciate anything that unless one practices what one is practices what one preaches. We use that expression. Thakur said it won't leave a lasting impression on people. It just won't, and we know that. Sometimes we hear different talks, different speakers, different swamis even, and some of them are not very eloquent. Really, sometimes their English isn't very good, but something stirs within, and we feel how genuine and simple they are, and it's because of their life. It's good to be able to speak, to be eloquent. There's no harm in that. Both are necessary, but it's really character that speaks more than anything else. And we feel that now. This Keshav, He was a tremendous orator, but he was also very, very sincere. And Swamiji, of course, we know that he had a great divine gift of oratory. But even if he hadn't had it, he had that personality and that tremendous spirituality behind it, everything. But there's one particular thing, this idea that those who want to be the teachers, those who want to give lectures and things, that they have to practice everything 100%. So he always felt that uh, uh, no matter how great a pundit somebody was, or even how spiritual, uh, if he said in secret they enjoyed lust and gold, then how could they talk about the renunciation of these things? So he was very strong on that those who were to be really teachers of men and women should be people of renunciation, a devotee. So then he said, I am the greatest of all fools, all that. A devotee. Then how is it that the Vedas and the Vedanta and many things besides come out of your mouth? Master smiling. During my boyhood, I could understand what the sadhus read at the Laha's house at Kamarpukur, although I would miss a little here and there. Now, he easily could have said, these things are like fruit in the palm of my hand. I've experienced all of these things. But he's trying to tell them that, no, I didn't read these things, but how many things I heard. Many times he would say that, how many things I heard. Now, the Lahas, they were the one wealthy family in Kamarpukur, and they had set up an almshouse and a little guest house, a place where wandering sadhus could stay. And when Sri Ramakrishna was a young boy, he would go and spend time. He would hang out with the sadhus there. And when he says, I could understand what the sadhus read at the Laha's house, that uh, I would think that the vast majority were Hindi speakers. Generally, these sadhus were from the upcountry. That's what they used to use that expression, UP or something like that. And when they're talking about scriptures, it would be Sanskrit. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, we know that he knew a fairly good amount of Hindi, partly because of Totapuri, I would think, and partly because of this contact at that time with these wandering sadhus, and partly because he had a brilliant mind with regard to certain things, not mathematics, but language. He's very good with language. He could pick up things easily. So I always thought it very strange. Sometimes there'd be a conversation with Hindi-speaking sadhu. He came to Thakur's room. Two of them would be speaking in Hindi, and Thakur would be translating into Bengali for those who are sitting in the room. All these highly educated people, you would think they would all know Hindi. Swamiji must have known Hindi. Indranil.
Actually, that place geographically very, very close to Hindi speaking area.
This is true.
Not far.
This is true. So there'll be, even linguistically, there'll be more contact with Hindi words and things like that. Not too much, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not far from here.
Not too far from Bihar, and then yeah. But I would think, I don't know. See, in Swamiji's family, a well-rounded education included Persian even. And Swamiji's father was an expert at Persian and reading this Sufi poetry and things, Hafiz and others like that. And Swami,
He did not know Hindi. He could not master.
yeah, M, yeah.
He didn't know Hindi.
It sounds like that. Yeah, yeah. Although so much, because it was so much of a Western education also. Yeah. Anyhow, it's interesting. He says, so anyhow, Thakur's a little bit of modesty here. He could have said, yes, don't you know I am a perfect soul? But he said, no, I heard so many things when I was a boy. During my boyhood, I could understand what the sadhus read at the Laha's house at Kamarpukur, although I would miss a little here and there. If a pundit speaks to me in Sanskrit, I can follow him, but I cannot speak it myself. I was once in the presence of two pundits, and one was a Hindi speaker and the other was a Bengali speaker, and neither one knew the other language, and neither one knew English. So they spoke in Sanskrit to each other. But it was a type of Sanskrit that almost anybody, either Hindi or Bengali speaker, would understand. It was, yeah, very few verbs and things, and very, very simple, straightforward. It was.
Also,
Huh?
Thakur lived with Ram Kumar in that tour.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Well, he's talking about as a boy here,
Yeah.
but still, that Thakur must have known Sanskrit quite well to be a pujari. Yeah, that he had to memorize all of these mantras and everything, and he studied that his Ram Kumar's elder brother came to Kolkata to open a Sanskrit school, as well as to do puja in the area and everything. And Thakur was kind of his assistant at that time. So he must have learned a fair amount.
And all these discussions at this last place by the Brahman Pandits,
Yeah,
Thakur would attend all those.
he attended all of those things at the Laha's place. And before all the disciples came in Dakshineshwar, even then, whenever any Pandit would come, he would go. Anyone would come into Kolkata, he would go and listen to them and everything. He had tremendous uh, curiosity about uh, what people, uh, what they wanted to learn, what interested them in spiritual life. This was a new world for him when he came to Kolkata, and these Western educated people. Huh? The great curiosity. I think that partly all this mixing with the Brahmo Samaj was to learn how these new creatures actually think. These people who are more interested in English and reading Kant and Hegel than Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya. So it must have been such a strange experience for him. Before he had left Kamarpur, I doubt if he had ever seen people like that at all. Just simple village people. I don't know. Maybe they saw a few British people and government people who had to come for post office or something like that, but not much growing up. To realize God is the one goal of life. While aiming his arrow at the mark, Arjuna said, I see only the eye of the bird and nothing else, and not the kings, nor the trees, nor even the bird itself. Now, to realize God is the one goal of life. This we had a nice discussion of this on the Sunday talk. Swami Atmajnananda. Different. This I think really requires a little bit of reflection. This statement. To realize God is the one goal of life. First of all, how many people in this world will accept that? Thakur says it as if there's no question about it. Huh? Now, uddeshya, what exactly does that mean? I often thought about this. First of all, you'll have how many millions and millions of devout Buddhists who don't even think in terms of God realization, but they have this idea of enlightenment. So, uh, and is this not a little bit one-sided that everyone has to accept the same ideal, God realization? So, how do we understand this? Uddeshya, what does that mean exactly? Sometimes I think that a better way of understanding this is as a destination, that this is the ultimate final destination, and that we may say that, yeah, this person, his whole goal in life was to be a good person. The next person's whole goal in life was to be charitable. Next person's whole goal in life was enjoyment. Next person's whole goal in life was to help the social fabric. All different goals of life. But according to Vedanta, that until they have that ultimate realization of their true nature and oneness with God, something like that, they won't reach that final destination of realization. We can take it that way. Otherwise, there are many, many wholly legitimate aims of life. I encourage everybody to go back and listen to last Sunday's lecture. It was a very nice discussion. We have the different stages of life. We have different aims of life, and they're all very important. This dharma has to inform everything. We have to learn that at the very beginning, and that has to stick with us throughout until the very end, when we may say we can go beyond dharma and adharma if we want. Otherwise, that has to be in the goal of life. And then kama and artha. These are legitimate goals of life. To have some enjoyment, to have some wealth, to have some property. These are legitimate aims of life during the householder stage, not ultimate. It's not ultimate. So, and with dharma ties everything up together, and mukti as the final one takes that bundle together and gives it a final destination. So the relationship between these chaturvarga, these four aims of life, is something very interesting. That dharma has to lay the groundwork for everything. Kama and artha, they won't be helpful unless there's dharma behind it. Unless we practice honesty and righteousness and everything, that we want property in order to sustain the family life, that we want money in order to be charitable and help others. A little bit of enjoyment, of course, because this is the one opportunity, the householder life, to see what is there in enjoyment. And it's not that everyone will say, it's worthless, but we can all understand that it's limited. I'll never say that good, healthy enjoyment is worthless. That we learn so much from it, and we get to understand the way the mind works, and we get to understand there's a higher state. Is there more contentment from reaching a state where we don't desire anything, where we're content with what we have? This is what we do in this householder stage of life. So we get to experiment with kama and artha, but within the limits of dharma, and with the ultimate view of mukti as the final destination or goal of life, so that we practice kama and artha with the view to giving them up at some point. And that's when we reach this vanaprasthan stage of life, when we take the retired life, and then at the end, to renounce everything, the life of sannyasa. How many actually followed this scheme of life? We don't know. Was it more theoretical? Was it just for educated Brahmin families and things? We don't know exactly. Of course, we see reference to it in the Upanishads and everything. But it doesn't matter. As a system, it's a beautiful system. And just to reach that retirement stage of life, where interest is really leading a spiritual life. Husband and wife together, side by side, fine. Thakur says, if the husband or the wife, if they have to go begging their food all day long, then why not stay in the family situation at least and lead a spiritual life that way? So it's I don't think it was ever the case where everyone was expected to take the sannyas at the end of life. Probably for Brahmins only, because they were probably the only ones who were allowed at that time. Kshatriyas, perhaps. Sometimes we talk about these Dvijas as the three upper castes. It depends on different scriptures and different time and everything. But the scheme as a scheme of life is brilliant. And it shows that we can have different goals of life, but the ultimate destination will be some type of going back to that original purity and wisdom and knowledge and the selfhood, that our real nature. That has to be somehow that we understand it in that sense somehow, that to realize God is the one goal of life, the ultimate destination. But we find many very, very good people who don't have this as a goal in life, and yet are very unselfish people and good-hearted people, kind people. They devote their life to science, they devote their life to charity, they devote their life to family, they lead a very simple type of life, very good people, and dharmic people. Now, we may say that uh, still they haven't attained the highest goal of life. This, of course, we don't know. What happens at the very end, the very final moment of life and everything, or the last few days when all desires disappear and some longing for something higher comes. These, if one leads such a good, pure, clean life like that, it's quite possible. But generally, we say there has to be some spiritual practice along with all this. Yeah. Yeah.
In that case, the Buddhists, when they talk about enlightenment,
Hmm.
but do they not achieve that realization of God?
They won't. They won't even think of God realization. Buddhists. There's no concept of God that is close enough to our idea of God that they'll even use that type of language. Even Brahman, even for the jnani, even the real jnani won't talk about God realization. It'll be self-realization or realization of impersonal absolute Brahman. If we think of God realization in terms of personal God, then it's restricted to theistic religions. So even the extreme non-dualists, they won't have that idea of God realization in the same sense that a devotee will have that idea. Now, others can argue that the experience is the same, that they're just using different terminology, this and that. Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, we can't dictate somebody else's experience and their interpretation of it. We have to respect their interpretation of it. If they say no, it's not God realization, we have to be respectful of that. I remember uh, participating in some interreligious council work, and the Buddhists were always the ones that felt out of place. It wasn't the Muslims or Christians or Jews, anybody, always the Buddhists. Because we hear over and over and over again, everyone is worshiping the same God, only different names and everything. We don't feel like that. We're not worshiping God. We're trying to get rid of this dukkha and to attain that state of enlightenment and everything. So we have to be respectful of tremendous variety of ways of understanding this goal of life. For them, the goal of life, nirvana. For some, the goal of life is just to get out. Just to get out. That may I not be born again. And then we'll have these other great souls, may I be born again and again. The Swamiji. But somehow, this idea that this life is not simply meant for enjoyment, that it would be wasting this opportunity if it's just for enjoyment. And even if it's for some type of satisfaction and contentment, there are deeper and deeper types of satisfaction and contentment that come from transcending this ego sense and going beyond these desires and these passions and things that keep us in some type of state of unease. Even the non-religious person has that feeling that, yeah, I'm not comfortable, that I'm always filled with anxiety and everything, what to do. And it's not always lead a spiritual life, a religious life. It is some very simple things. Learn to be content with what you have. We have the Vimamsakas. You can simply say that look upon everything as your own karma and just accept everything. Practice titiksha. So there are all different ways of looking at this dilemma of human life. Why are we here? What's the purpose of life? How do we get through it? For some people, the whole goal of life is to get through it, somehow unscathed, somehow without suffering too much, because there's a lot of suffering that comes with it. Others, it's always a very high, lofty ideal they're striving for. So when we read this, to realize God is the one goal of life, we can say ultimate destination of this human soul will be to go back to that from which it came. Something like that is very vague language, but something like that. While aiming his arrow at the mark, Arjuna said, I see only the eye of the bird and nothing else, not the kings, nor the trees, nor even the bird itself. This means that just to have this one goal in life. And it ties everything together. It doesn't mean that we don't have any other interests or anything like that. Huh? It ties everything together. Otherwise, everything is just this Ananta Shaka, these infinite branches going off in all different directions. Huh? But there's one thing that unifies everything. That whatever we do as an offering. Whatever we do without this feeling of ego. That it gives a purpose and a meaning and at one point in this to everything in life. The realization of God is enough for me. What does it matter if I don't know Sanskrit? Again, back to the Sanskrit. The grace of God falls alike on all his children, learned and illiterate, whoever longs for him. Now, we have a couple of things here. One is this universal concept of grace, which is almost the opposite of the highly theistic idea of grace. Highly theistic idea of grace is that it's unmerited, that it's just out of the tremendous mercy of God, whether I deserve it or not, and the feeling I don't deserve it at all. And why it came to me, no real answer to that. Thakur talks about that type of grace, but generally he'll talk about there must be some karma behind it. And more often he talks about this universal idea of grace, that this is something that's available and open to everyone. So nothing to do with learned or illiterate, nothing to do with being a great pundit, nothing to do with knowing all these intricate theories. This sometimes I hear about this Drishti Srishti Vada and Srishti Drishti Vada, and my head starts to spin. There are all these different things. They're interesting, I guess. At one time I found them slightly interesting, but too many theories and not enough simplicity. That really spiritual life should be very, very simple. Swamiji How simply put it, do good and be good. What a beautiful statement. And somehow to know that we have to go beyond this ordinary human mind and the deeper and deeper levels that we can attain to, or higher levels, however we look at it, that don't require all the intricate theories and everything. The Swamiji is very clear. God is not found in doctrines or dogmas, in temples or churches. We have to turn deep within. So the grace of God falls alike on all his children, learned and illiterate, whoever longs for him. Yeah, this Vakulata is the key for Sri Ramakrishna, this tremendous longing. We have that longing, and that's the catalyst. In very theistic language, he'll say, God cannot help himself. Mother cannot help herself. When the child starts weeping and wailing for the mother, that she'll drop everything and come immediately.
But Mother, this longing is also has to be the grace of God, right? Otherwise, it's more like I'm trying to long because the pull of the mind is still to the other part of the world.
Yeah, I think at some point we come to the realization everything is the grace of God. So this great, if we want this desire for longing, the grace of God. And then when the longing comes, grace of God. Then when the realization comes, grace of God. Yeah. Now this desire, this longing for God can also come through tremendous pain and suffering and disappointment in life. Then we say that's also the grace of God.
Mother says, no suffering to be a special marker.
No suffering to be a special grace of God. Yeah, Holy Mother. Many of the, Thakur Swamiji. Swamiji has a very beautiful poem called The Angels Unawares. And he talks about this blessed misery and blessed superstition, all the things that we laugh at and everything, that how can this be a positive thing? But these are the things that can turn us, turn the mind in a new direction or something. The very common belief, commonly held belief among Alcoholics Anonymous, that one has to reach rock bottom before one can have a change in life. So reaching rock bottom is grace for them. So it comes in all different forms. The father has the same love for all his children. Suppose a father has 5 children. One calls him Baba, some Ba, and some Pa. These last cannot pronounce the whole word. Does the father love those who address him as Baba more than those who call him Pa? The father knows that these last are simply too young to say Baba correctly. Since the injury to my arm, a change has been coming over my mind. Now, I never did a count, but it must be at least a half a dozen times when Thakur makes this statement. That he'll talk about his broken arm, and then he'll talk about the Vaishnav Charan and the Nada Lila. It occurs so many times. Now, because he very recently hurt his arm, and it's still in the bandage and everything. Since this injury to my arm, a change has been coming over my mind. I've been feeling much inclined to the Nara Lila. Now, Thakur talks about the different types. Deva Lila. What is this Deva Lila? Now, in some other realm, this play of Krishna and the gopis is going on eternally. In some other realm, that Shiva and Parvati are sitting and having some conversation, which will turn out to be the tantric scriptures. In some other realm, this Ma Durga is enacting this play, destroying demons, something like that. There's a Deva Lila. And there's another Lila will be this divine play enacted on earth for those who took human form, or all human form. Thakur uses it in both senses. It's Nara Lila for the avatar, and also seeing God dwelling in all human beings, all living beings also, but mostly Nara, this is human beings. Since this injury to my arm, a change has been coming over my mind. I've been feeling much inclined to the Nara Lila. It is God himself who plays about as human beings. Now, he could say as a human being, then God sports in the form of a human being as the avatar. But this is a even deeper Vedantic idea that the same one Brahman is manifesting as each and every individual. The dwelling within all beings. That's also this not a lila, because he says as human beings, not just as one. It is God himself who plays about as human beings. If God can be worshipped through a clay image, then why not through a man? And this was Swamiji's main emphasis. This worship of the living God, God in human form. Once a merchant was shipwrecked. He floated to the shore of Ceylon, where Vibhishana was the king of the monsters. Vibhishana ordered his servants to bring the merchant to him. At the sight of him, Vibhishana was overwhelmed with joy and said, "Ah, he looks like my Rama, the same human form." He adorned the merchant with robes and jewels and worshipped him. When I first heard this story, I felt such a joy that I cannot describe it. Vaishnav Charan. He'll always bring Vaishnav Charan. There's Vaishnav Charan and Sri Ramakrishna. They just hit it off. They just had a sweet relationship. They weren't on the same page with regard to spiritual practice. He was the leader of these groups that did some of this left-handed stuff and everything. But Thakur liked him and respected him somehow, and he also could recognize Thakur's greatness somehow. So they had this nice relationship. This is all before Thakur's real disciples came. So he enjoyed the company of all these people. They came first, then the Brahmos came. But still, he would go up to the roof and cry out to Mother Oh, where are my real disciples? Come, come, come. Because he knew they had not yet come. Vaishnav Charan said to me, if a person looks on his beloved as his ishta, he finds it very easy to direct his mind to God. Now, what does beloved mean? It can mean paramour. It doesn't. They weren't much interested whether husband and wife or anything like that. This there were different groups. There's Goshpara and Karita Bhaja and Navarasika. There's another, we don't know so much about them. Sahajiyas. There are many of them. Some of them could be traced back to Buddhist tradition, some to Sufi tradition, some to Vaishnava tradition, some to Shakta traditions, but they all share this in common, that there'll be some spiritual practice done with men and women together. That the temptation of the human mind is great, and they can point to this Radha Krishna Lila for all of that. They can point to the Shiva Durga. They can point to all different things to try to justify it. So he says, if a person looks on his beloved as his ishta, he finds it very easy to direct his mind to God. The men and women of a particular sect at Shambazar near Kamarpukur. Then there's the footnote. The reference is to certain minor sects of Vaishnavism, such as the Karita Bhaja and the Navarasika, which teach that men and women should live together in the relationship of love. Gradually, they should idealize their love by looking upon each other as divine, eventually realizing that their physical love is also the love of God. And then it says, this is very difficult to realize. So the men and women of a particular sect at Shambazar near Kamarpukur say to each other, whom do you love? I love so and so. Then know him to be your God. When I heard this, I said to them, that is not my way. See, Thakur could respect them if he felt that they were genuine. There's one section from Leela Prasang, the Great Master. It's a very nice little, just a couple of paragraphs. When Swami Atmajnanananda, he said that when we were growing up as boys, not young boys, when they first came to Sri Ramakrishna, late teenagers, something like that, how we looked down upon these people with not just the men and women drinking wine and doing all sorts of things. And Thakur himself would say, no, no, my child, don't look down upon them. This is also a path, but it's not a clean path, and don't follow that path. But how their eyes were open, how Thakur could even see this is a possible path. He said, like going into the house through, these old houses. The scavenger would go through the back directly into the bathroom. They didn't have to walk inside the house at all. There would be a back door where the latrine was, and they could go there. They could clean out the latrine, and they could leave. There's also an entrance into the house, but who will do that? So he gave a yes and no. There's also a path, but it's not a clean path. Don't follow that path. So when I heard this, I said to them, that is not my way. I look on all women as my mother. I found out that they talked big, but led immoral lives. The women then asked me if they would have salvation. Yes, I said, if you were absolutely faithful to one man and look on him as your God, but you cannot be liberated if you live with 5 men. Ram. Now again, this is Ram. Again, be a troublemaker. I understand that Kedar Babu has recently visited the Karta Bhaja's place. See, this is Kedar, after coming to Sri Ramakrishna and recognizing him as an avatar and everything, still he used to go to different places and things like that. There's no point in Ram mentioning it in front of everybody, but still. Master, he gathers honey from various flowers. He's not really, doesn't want to say too much about it. Wasn't a very appropriate thing to bring up. To Ram, Nitya Gopal, and the others. If a devotee believes 100% that his chosen ideal is God, then he attains God and sees him. People of bygone generations had tremendous faith. What faith Haladari's father had. Once he was on his way. Of course, he could have mentioned his own father, and he does sometimes. Very similar stories about his own father. Once he was on his way to his daughter's house when he noticed some beautiful flowers and vilva leaves. He gathered them for the worship of the family deity and walked back 5 or 6 miles to his own house. Once, a theatrical troupe in the village was enacting the life of Rama. When Kaikeyi asked Rama to go into exile in the forest, Haladhari's father, who had been watching the performance, sprang up. He went to the actor who played Kaikeyi, crying out, "You wretch!" and was about to burn the actor's face with a torch. He was a very pious man. Not such a pious thing to do, but he was a very pious man. After finishing his ablutions, he would stand in the water and meditate on the deity, reciting the invocation. I meditate on thee of red hue and 4 faces, while tears streamed down his cheeks. When my father walked along the lanes of the village wearing his wooden sandals, this is kind of a sign of austerity and simplicity and lack of ostentatious and everything. So there's some significance to these wooden sandals. The shopkeepers would stand up out of respect and say, "There he comes." When he bathed in the Haldar Pukur, very big pond, and so many people would go and wash their clothes and bathe and gather water for cooking, so many things. When he bathed in the Haldar Pukur, the villagers would not have the courage to get into the water. Before bathing, they would inquire if he had finished his bath. When my father chanted the name of Raghuveer, his chest would turn crimson. This also happened to me. When I saw the cows at Vrindavan returning from the pasture, I was transported into a divine mood, and my body became red. Very strong was the faith of the people in those days. One hears that God used to dance then, taking the form of Kali, while the devotee clapped his hands, keeping time. Okay, let me stop here. We get into a little conversation about this Hatha Yogi who was staying near the Panchavati at that time. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukham Bhatadavikraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirisanam. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who was stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.